Let's talk about this latest report from the Department of Veterans Affairs Office of Inspector General. On May 8th, 2024, the Department of Veterans Affairs Office of Inspector General issued a report basically concluding that the VA needs more oversight over its contract, claim, and pension examiners. No kidding. Anyone that does this or has been doing this for a while absolutely knows this. The decision review officers at the VA knows this. The Board of Veterans Appeals knows this. We have seen some very pointed opinions come out of the Board of Veterans Appeals recently, pointing out that we really need to have better oversight of the claim and pension exam process. Obviously, it's a problem. Let's talk a little bit more about what this particular report says. This particular report talked about OSHA and ADA violations at the claim and pension contractors' offices. Right now, if you file a claim for compensation benefits or a supplemental claim, or maybe higher level review sends back for a claim and pension exam, you will go to one of the VA's C&P examiners. Now, majority of them are nurse practitioners or PAs working for one of 4 separate contractors that have massive contracts with the Department of Veterans Affairs to schedule and conduct these exams. I have been incredibly critical of this program for a while, but now we've handed off to contractors, and that was supposed to fix up VA's in-house doctors, the one who are working for the Veterans Health Administration, to actually see patients, and instead these contracted providers would handle the lion's share of the C&P exams. All of these subcontracted providers, a lot of them are on their own to get themselves medical office space where they can conduct these exams. What we find out is that a lot of these places don't have proper ADA or OSHA compliance, which is just terrific when you think about all of the disabled veterans who are trying to get to these exams. It's kind of ridiculous. And it wasn't just like a small percentage, it was like 30 or 40% actually were compliant. And I can read you some of these numbers here. In one case, the OIG identified ADA and OSHA deficiencies at 114 of 135 facilities the review team visited nationwide. Yeah, that's bad. That's like less than 20% pass, right? That's really not good. Ultimately, the VA faulted the problems with the lack of oversight and just allowing these contractors to self-certify that their facilities were OSHA compliant or ADA compliant, and that's just not working. But here's what the OIG report didn't find. They didn't really talk about accuracy of the reports themselves. They didn't discuss the faulty exam requests and the completely ridiculous and often illegal exam justifications. For instance, I see in my practice a lot of exams come back and say, well, there's no chronicity of care, or the veteran was not seen in service for this condition. And that is not a valid reason by itself to deny service connection. Yet, contractors do this all the time because there's no oversight, and the VA is rubber stamping these reports. Now, this is a multi-billion dollar, billion with a B, billion-dollar program the VA is trying to administer, but they don't do any kind of oversight to do quality control, not on the physical facilities, as we're finding out in this report, or as I can tell you, and any VA disability attorney can tell you, any accredited agent can tell you, quite frankly, half of the decision review officers at the VA can tell you, they're not doing any quality control on the exams themselves. They are not sending these exams back to the contractor when they contain blatantly BS rationales in their medical opinions. At the end of the day, this OIG report asks, hey, we need more oversight over these. Yeah, no kidding. It's a multi-billion-dollar program. You absolutely need more oversight over these. This is like the report was written by Captain Obvious, right? And I get it. It's a big project. But when I was working in retail many years ago, when I was just before I was Andy Gross Esquire, when I was just a high school and college student, I worked retail. We knew that there were secret shoppers coming in to test us on everything from our product knowledge to how fast we greeted them at the sales counter. So why the VA doesn't have an active and robust secret shopper program of sorts, I don't know. And it's very frustrating, but quite frankly, our veterans deserve better. The American taxpayer deserves better. Instead of handing out billions of dollars to these contractors with no oversight, it really needs to change, and quite frankly, it needs to change yesterday. I know there's been some hearings in Congress on this, but they really need to clamp down on it. A couple months ago, there was a hearing where the deputy chair of the Board of Veterans Appeals testified, and he said, we remand 80 or 70% of our cases, as if that's a badge of honor. Yeah, great. The board remands to the regional offices 70% of cases. That means only 30% of cases are passing muster. And why is it? It's the exams. Everyone knows it's the exams. I've said this 1,000 times. My colleagues have said this 1,000 times. it's the exams. So what does this mean for you, the veteran, with these shoddy exams? Not necessarily based just on this OIG report, but based on my experience as a VA disability attorney and the experience that I've heard from other folks. Couple tips. First, take notes on the exam. If it goes weird, if they don't use one of those goniometer things to measure range of motion on your exam for a joint that should be tested for range of motion, like your knee or your hip, that's something you might want to take a note of down the road. If they don't ask you any questions about flare-ups, that's important. If you go in for a back exam or a neck exam and they don't ask you about radiculopathy, that's another thing to write down. That's important to know. Because a lot of times we know that radiculopathy is supposed to be included in the back exams, but sometimes they just don't ask about the nerve problems that are being caused by the back or neck issues. So again, take notes at the exam and put those on a 4138 and put those in the file if you think it's appropriate. The other thing I tell veterans and start telling veterans, and this is really, again, I'm going to give a shout out to Clay at the CivDiv, it's your evidence. Don't let the VA get a monopoly on gathering the evidence for your file. So what does that mean? If you have an independent medical opinion, but the VA is developing deny and sending you to another exam anyway, bring a copy of that independent medical opinion with you to the exam and show the examiner. Say, hey, listen, we already got an opinion on this. If it's a headache case, don't let the only evidence of headaches and how frequent they are come from the C&P exam. Do a headache diary. Keep a pain journal about your other joints, about your knees, about your back, how often you're having flare-ups. And then put them on a 4138 or maybe just upload them directly to the VA. Doesn't really matter. But don't let the VA have that monopoly on the evidence itself. Because if you can submit these documents to the VA showing how frequently these conditions are occurring, it can go a long way to making sure that the C&P exam itself is as accurate as it can be, but also that the evidence is in the file in case you need to appeal down the road because the C&P examiner dorked things up. I hope that's helpful, some takeaways. Again, I didn't focus too much on this OIG report because quite frankly, it's telling us stuff we already knew. I sometimes joke that, some of these C&P examiners are operating out of trailers in the back of strip malls. And I say that because I've had veterans tell me this, but it's, again, we need to think about what can we do to protect ourselves in these C&P exams. Doesn't mean going out and spending money on Nexus letters. It doesn't mean going out and not going to C&P exams. It just means getting your evidence that you have control over into the file and before the medical examiner. So hopefully we can get the best possible rating for you. Anyway, I hope that helps. Until next time, take care.